In 1929, as the world plunged into the Great Depression, Brazil faced a cruel paradox. It had too much coffee, so much that the government was forced to burn millions of sacks to prevent market prices from collapsing. Trains loaded with Arabica beans no longer headed toward export ports, but toward open fields where they were set ablaze and reduced to ash. This was not merely agricultural waste. It was the collapse of a system. Classical economics teaches that when supply exceeds demand, prices fall. But for a nation dependent on a single crop, falling prices meant collapsing public revenue, a weakening currency, and social instability. At the time, Brazil produced nearly 70% of the world's coffee. It was not just selling beans, it was selling its own stability. And in that moment of crisis, a question emerged. How could surplus be transformed into something that lasted longer, traveled farther, and sold more reliably? Instant coffee was not born out of humanity's desire for convenience. It was born because the system could not endure excess. To understand why it took nearly 30 years of failed experiments before instant coffee succeeded, we must return to the laboratories of the early 20th century, where convenience itself was seen as an insult to tradition. In 1901, Japanese chemist Satoru Kato demonstrated a form of dried coffee at an exposition in the United States. In 1910, British entrepreneur George Constant Louis Washington commercialized another version. Technically, the concept was simple: extract, dry, hedges solve. But society was not ready. In the early 1900s, coffee was more than a beverage. It was ritual. Grinding beans, boiling water, waiting for the drip. This entire process symbolized patience and middle-class dignity. A product that required just add water felt crude, mechanized, soulless. Here we see a classic conflict between technology and culture. Technology optimizes time. Culture protects meaning. Instant coffee in this era was trapped between two worlds. Too industrial to be considered refined, yet too novel to be trusted. The problem was not chemistry, it was perception. But economic crisis does not respect ritual. As Brazil's stockpiles continued to swell, the pressure to find a long-term solution intensified. That was when state and corporation joined forces. Storing coffee beans for years was a technical nightmare. Beans contain oils and residual moisture. Oxygen in the air oxidizes lipids, causing rancidity and flavor loss. Mold thrives in tropical humidity. The larger the warehouse, the greater the risk. In the 1930s, Nestlé did more than invent a product. It solved an economic equation: how to convert a perishable commodity into a stable, durable form that could travel across continents. Instant coffee was the answer. By removing nearly all the water accounts for roughly 98% of brewed coffee, the product became dry, microbiologically stable, and chemically less reactive. Shelf life extended from months to years. At its core, this was chemical monetization. Coffee beans were transformed into a format that was easier to store, measure, and exchange. No longer a seasonal agricultural crop, coffee became a standardized industrial good. This transformation did not merely rescue Brazil's warehouses, it prepared instant coffee for a role no one anticipated: fuel for global war. When World War II erupted, the U.S. military needed a caffeine source that was stable, lightweight, and easy to transport. Roasted ground coffee required brewing equipment, time, and boiling water luxuries in combat conditions. Instant coffee met every logistical requirement. Lightweight, dry, no complex tools needed. Just hot water, sometimes even warm water, was enough. Yet its function extended beyond physiology. Caffeine is an alkaloid that stimulates the central nervous system by blocking adenosine receptors, the molecules responsible for signaling fatigue. When adenosine is blocked, the brain maintains alertness and reaction speed. In a frozen trench, a cup of Nescafé was not merely stimulation. It was a fragment of normalcy amid chaos. It restored circadian rhythm beneath artillery fire. By the end of the war, millions of American soldiers had grown accustomed to instant coffee. When they returned home, they brought the habit with them. A product once dismissed as anti-ritual became a symbol of efficiency and modernity. War accomplished what marketing never could. It standardized a habit on a national scale. After 1945, the world entered an era of rapid industrialization and urbanization. Time became scarce. The emerging middle class sought products that reduced labor and uncertainty. Instant coffee fit perfectly into this new logic. It eliminated brewing skill. It eliminated variability. It eliminated failure. A spoon became the democratic instrument of caffeine. Its standardization also enabled global trade to expand. A jar in Tokyo could taste nearly identical to one in Paris. Coffee experience became less dependent on baristas or local cafes, and more dependent on industrial uniformity. Of course, convenience came at the cost of flavor complexity. But the post-war economic system prioritized stability and scalability over uniqueness. Instant coffee was not the product of pure creative inspiration. It was a structural response to systemic pressure surplus, war, and the demand for standardization. And in that response, a global agricultural nightmare was quietly transformed into one of the most portable commodities in modern history.